Death Under the Deodars. The Adventures of Miss Ripley-Bean by Ruskin Bond. Read by Dev J. Haldar. To the memory of Auntie May Ripley-Bean, and with thanks for the recipe for her creme de menthe. A toast to Auntie May, the creme de menthe of my early Mussoorie years. Death Under the Deodars. She's still a very sexy-looking woman, isn't she? The observation came from Colonel Bakshi, retired, who was staring across the room at Mrs. Basu as she posed beside a vase overflowing with yellow chrysanthemums. In her glory days, she was known as the man-eater of Lucknow, commented Nandu, the proprietor of the Royal. She snapped up young men like a lizard snapping up flies. Nothing of the lizard about her, more like a queen of old, with men falling at her feet. Or falling all over her, quipped Nandu, who fancied himself a connoisseur of female beauty. "You're just a couple of male chauvinists," said Mrs. Bakshi, coming up to them with a bunch of carnations in her hand. "How about looking at the flower arrangements instead?" "All right, so long as I'm not one of the judges," said the colonel. "You'll have to give a prize to the Maharani of Dole, or she'll cut you up for the rest of your life." It was early October in the year 1967, and the Royal was hosting its annual flower show. The old ballroom was used for this purpose, and it was looking magnificent, with floral displays representing the best gardens in Mussoorie and Haldar. There were multicolored dahlias from Daryaganj, chrysanthemums from the Kapurthala Palace, geraniums from the Company Gardens, cacti from the State Bank Special Collection, carnations from Mrs. Basu's boarding house, begonias from the Rajpipla Palace, and asters, azaleas, pansies, and petunias from almost everyone who had a garden. In the hills, October is the best time for flowers. The winters were too cold and frosty, the spring too windy, the summer too brief, the monsoon months too wet. But if you were patient and looked after your plants, you would be well rewarded in the autumn. The ballroom was soon full of guests, for this was the opening afternoon of the flower show, and prizes would be given by the Princess of Kapurthala, a beautiful lady dressed in a cornflower blue sari. She blended well with the floral surroundings. So did another guest, Miss Gamla, who was wearing a large yellow hat, which made her look like a floppy chrysanthemum. Miss Gamla, a spinster in her 60s, was a great gossip. She had buttonholed Dr. Reinhardt, the German dentist, and was telling him that the Rajpipla begonias had in fact been brought over from their Simla palace and had not been grown in Mussoorie. "Quite fraudulent, don't you think?" she asked. "Most unfair," said Dr. Reinhardt. "You should inform the judges." "I have already done so." "Excellent, excellent. You're always so prompt in all these matters, Miss Gamla." Dr. Reinhardt had been in Mussoorie for a couple of years, appointed as a dentist to the Tibetan refugee community and one or two residential schools. He had his clinic in a wing of the Royal. He was an affable man, always courteous, but he did not socialize much. His past was something of a mystery. There was nothing mysterious about Miss Ripley-Bean's past. She was a long-time resident of the hotel, occupying 2 small rooms in the old wing, from which she had contrasting views, the eternal snows in the far distance and the royal piggery just below. No one had bothered to invite Miss Ripley-Bean to the flower show, but it was taken for granted that she would be there, as she was very much a part of the establishment. Her father, the late Mr. Ripley-Bean, had owned the hotel at the time of independence and had sold it to Nandu's father on the condition that his daughter, Miss Ripley-Bean, could live there for the rest of her days. She had already been a resident for 20 years and at 68 was looking forward to another 20. She loved these annual flower shows, and she was not going to miss this one, even if she did have a toothache. Perhaps Dr. Reinhardt would give her an appointment. Tea was being served, and of course cucumber sandwiches, very small ones, along with some rubbery paneer pakoras. The royal cook had only that morning given notice, and the snacks had been prepared by the masalchi. 2 groups of children drifted into the ballroom. some girls from the convent school accompanied by a young lady teacher, and several boys from St. George's who made a beeline for the pakoras and polished them off in no time. Somewhere a piano was playing. It was Mr. Lobo in the lounge, strumming out a Strauss waltz. He was the hotel pianist. Miss Ripley-Bean stopped to listen to him playing. Was it the Blue Danube or Roses of the South? She liked Mr. Lobo, a very considerate young man. He knew she wasn't a paying guest at the hotel, but he enjoyed playing old numbers for her. She always stopped to listen and applaud, unlike most customers who treated his playing as background music to be largely ignored. It was nearly 6 o'clock and beginning to grow dark. Time for the prize giving. No one noticed Miss Ripley-Bean as she stood beneath the Deodars, humming in time with the waltz and shivering slightly as a sudden gust of wind came whirling across the tennis courts, scattering the red gold leaves that had fallen from the horse-chestnut trees. May Ripley-Bean sat down on a garden bench. She would look at the flower arrangements later when the excitement was over. She liked sitting there beneath the Deodars as the evening sun went down and the shadows lengthened and then merged with the darkness. Shadows, unfamiliar ones, on the walls. The light from the opposite building came on, and 2 larger-than-life shadows appeared on the outer walls of the ballroom. Miss Ripley-Bean saw them distinctly, the shadows, not the persons who made them. And they were struggling, grappling with each other. From her bench under the Deodars, Miss Ripley-Bean watched them in fascination. No sound reached her. The piano playing and the murmur from within the ballroom muffled other sounds. Miss Ripley-Bean stood up, wondering if she should approach the spot in the shrubbery where the struggle was taking place. But suddenly, the shadows vanished. A figure stepped out of the darkness beyond the entrance, glanced once in the direction of Miss Ripley-Bean, hesitated, and then stole away. She had not been able to identify them, the fleeting shadows. It was too dark, and they were too far away. But the figure had seen her, and she had been recognized. Inside the ballroom, the prizes were being announced. Silver-plated trophies were being handed out. Mr. Ohri, the State Bank's manager, received one for the bank's cactus collection, although he personally hated cacti. Mrs. Bakshi picked up a prize for her giant African marigolds. Dr. Reinhardt was rewarded for the pansies he had grown in his window boxes. The Kapurthala chrysanthemums were suitably recognized, in spite of the display on Miss Gamla's hat. The Company Garden and Daryaganj picked up numerous awards. Miss Gamla goggled as the Rajpipla begonias received a special prize. "Imposters!" she exclaimed. "They came from Simla." And then, to her further aggravation, Mrs. Basu's carnations were singled out for the first prize. "Mrs. Basu," announced Nandu, acting as the master of ceremonies. "First prize for your splendid creations." But Mrs. Basu was nowhere to be seen. "Mrs. Basu? Mrs. Basu," repeated Nandu. "Where is Mrs. Basu?" "Probably off with a new boyfriend," muttered Miss Gamla under her breath. "She went outside about 10 minutes ago," said Colonel Bakshi. "Might be listening to Mr. Lobu on the piano. I'll just take a look." He stepped outside, and in his absence the prize-giving was concluded with a short speech from Nandu thanking all those who had participated in the show. It would stay open to the public the following day, and then the exhibits would be collected by their respective owners. He had barely finished speaking when Colonel Bakshi returned, looking very agitated. "Something's happened to Mrs. Basu," he said. "She's lying outside in a flower bed. I think she's dead." A hush stole over the ballroom, followed by exclamations of horror and disbelief. Nandu, Dr. Reinhardt, and 1 or 2 of the hotel staff made for the door. The others, like trees in a petrified forest, remained where they were. The men found Mrs. Basu lying crumpled in a bed of nasturtiums. A strand of ivy had been twisted around her neck. It had bitten deep into her flesh. Her eyes protruded. Her tongue lolled out. "She's been strangled," said Nandu, stating the obvious. "Most unfair," he continued. "I'm having enough difficulty filling this hotel without people committing their murders here."
Mr. Lobo, unaware of what was happening,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?